The massive alien ships appeared without warning at the edge of the solar system. At first, the Earth's deep space monitoring stations detected only unusual energy readings. Then came the flood of signals, patterns repeating across all frequencies, clearly artificial, but unlike anything human communication systems had seen before. "Sir, you need to see this," said Lieutenant Ramos, his eyes fixed on the main display at Space Command Headquarters. General Adams approached the screen, where dozens of enormous vessels now appeared in high-resolution imagery from the outer system telescopes. The vessels were unlike any human design, organic-looking curves and spirals made of a material that seemed to shimmer between solid and translucent. They weren't moving in formation, but rather drifting aimlessly, some rotating slowly. "Are they damaged?" asked Adams. "Appears so, sir, and there are thousands of them." The decision came quickly. Earth would send its most advanced ship, the UES Pathfinder, to make first contact. Captain Jack Wilson received the orders with characteristic calm, though inside he felt the weight of humanity resting on his shoulders. "This is what we trained for," he told his crew as they prepared for departure. First contact, the moment that changes everything. The journey to the edge of the solar system took 3 weeks, even with the Pathfinder's advanced drives. As they approached, the true scale of the alien fleet became apparent. Nearly 10,000 vessels of varying sizes, from small scout-like craft to enormous ships that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. "My God," whispered Dr. Liang, the science officer, as she studied the readings. "There must be millions of life forms aboard. And look at their power signatures. They're operating on minimal systems." Wilson nodded, like a car running on fumes. The Pathfinder approached cautiously, broadcasting simple mathematical sequences, humanity's standard first contact protocol. The response came almost immediately. The closest alien ship projected a dazzling display of light patterns that shifted and changed in complexity. "They're trying to communicate," said Dr. Maya Reed, the xenolinguistics expert. Her fingers flew across her console as the ship's AI worked to analyze the patterns. "It's not audio-based like our languages. It's visual communication, combined with something else our sensors are detecting as subsonic vibrations." For 3 days, they worked on establishing basic communication. The breakthrough came when Reed noticed mathematical constants appearing in the alien transmissions, the value of pi, the golden ratio, simple prime number sequences. "They're using math to build a translation framework," she explained, "just like we are." By the end of the first week, they had established enough of a common language to understand the basics of the alien situation. They called themselves the Valyrians, a spacefaring civilization that had been traveling between star systems using advanced hyperspace technology. But something had gone catastrophically wrong during their last jump. An unknown cosmic phenomenon had damaged their entire fleet's propulsion systems, stranding them in unfamiliar space. "Their life support is failing," Wilson reported back to Earth. "They've got maybe 6 months before the situation becomes critical for the majority of their vessels." The images Wilson sent back stunned the people of Earth. The Valyrians had an almost human-like appearance, but with blue-tinted skin and large, reflective eyes adapted for the dim light of their home world. Their obvious distress triggered something deep and instinctive in human observers. "We need to help them," was the overwhelming response from people across Earth as the news spread. Wilson agreed, standing on the bridge of the Pathfinder, watching the massive fleet drift helplessly in the void. He made a decision that would change the course of human history. "Send a message to Earth," he told his communications officer. "Tell them we're going to need a lot more ships." The small meeting room aboard the UES Pathfinder hummed with tension. Dr. Maya Reed's eyes burned from lack of sleep as she stared at the holographic display showing the latest Valyrian transmission. A complex dance of light patterns that shifted and changed like living art. "Play it again," she said, rubbing her temples. The AI complied, and the pattern repeated. Beside her, Lieutenant Parker flinched as a subsonic vibration accompanied the lights. felt more than heard. 3 days, Reed muttered. 3 days, and all we've managed is basic math exchanges. Captain Wilson entered the room, his face showing the strain of first contact responsibility. Any progress? Reed shook her head. Their language isn't just different in form, it's different in structure. They seem to communicate multiple concepts simultaneously through layered light patterns and vibrations. Our brains simply aren't wired to process information that way. We don't have time for perfect translation, Wilson reminded her. Their fleet's life support systems are failing. We need to understand how to help them, and fast. Reed nodded, knowing he was right. Millions of lives hung in the balance. There's something else, she said hesitantly. I think they're frustrated. The patterns are becoming more erratic. They're trying different approaches, but they don't understand why we're so slow to comprehend. Just then, the ship's AI interrupted. Dr. Reed, I've detected a new pattern in the transmissions. The holographic display shifted to show a simple image, what appeared to be a crude drawing of the solar system, with Earth highlighted. Beside it appeared another star system, completely different, with a planet marked in similar fashion. They're showing us their home, Wilson whispered. The display changed again, showing the Valyrian fleet moving between the two star systems, then encountering a swirling, chaotic region of space. The ships scattered, engines failed, and they drifted toward Earth's solar system. They're telling us their story, Reed said, excitement building in her voice. They're switching to visual representation. For the next 12 hours, Reed and her team worked without rest, exchanging increasingly complex visual narratives with the Valyrians. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, when a junior linguist named Raj had an insight. What if we send them music? He suggested. Not just sounds, but the visualization of sound waves alongside the audio. Reed looked skeptical but approved the attempt. They transmitted Bach's Cello Suite No. 1 along with its waveform visualization. The response was immediate and dramatic. The main Valyrian ship lit up with patterns more complex than anything they'd seen before. The subsonic vibrations changed frequency, becoming almost melodic. They understand, Reed exclaimed. Music is mathematical and emotional at once. It's bridging the gap. Within hours, they developed a crude but functional translation system. The Valyrians, it turned out, had a neural structure that processed information through multiple pathways simultaneously. What humans would experience sequentially, they experienced as a unified whole. It's like trying to explain a painting one color at a time, Reed explained to Captain Wilson. We see red, then blue, then yellow. They see the complete image at once. The first truly meaningful exchange came 3 days later. A Valyrian representative, whose name translated roughly as light through waves, appeared on the view screen. Its form was vaguely humanoid, but with translucent blue skin through which pulses of bioluminescence traveled in complex patterns. Your species, unexpected, came the halting translation. Our need, great, ships dying, people dying, energy, failing. Wilson stepped forward. We want to help you. Tell us what you need. The alien's inner lights pulsed rapidly. Your technology, primitive, cannot understand our drives, cannot fix. We'd like to try, Wilson insisted. A pause. Then, curious creatures. Why help strangers from stars? Wilson didn't hesitate. Because you need help. That's reason enough. The translation conveyed his words, and the Valyrian's lights dimmed momentarily before flaring brighter than before. The AI translated. Perhaps primitive is wrong word. Perhaps unexpected wisdom. For the first time since the alien fleet appeared, Wilson felt hope. The language barrier wasn't fully broken, but a bridge had been built. One word, one concept, one shared understanding at a time. Commander Tom Blake stared at the holographic display, showing the internal workings of a Valyrian engine. Its complexity made Earth's most advanced technology look like a child's toy. crystalline structures interlaced with what appeared to be liquid metal conduits, all pulsing with energy that defied current human understanding of physics. "It's impossible," muttered Chief Engineer Patel, shaking her head. "We can't even identify half these materials, let alone understand how they function together." Blake ran a hand through his messy hair. "We don't need to understand everything. We just need to get them moving again." The engineering bay of the UES Pathfinder had become the central hub for humanity's rescue efforts. Additional specialists had arrived from Earth on fast shuttles, bringing experimental equipment and fresh ideas. Sleep-deprived engineers from a dozen countries hunched over workstations, arguing theories and testing simulations. "The problem isn't conventional propulsion," Blake explained to Captain Wilson, who had just entered the bay. "Their ships use some kind of hyperspace technology. They fold space rather than moving through it." Wilson frowned. "And we can't replicate that." "Not even close," Blake admitted. "We're like cavemen trying to fix a quantum computer." The captain's face hardened. "Then we need to think differently. If we can't fix their engines, how else can we move them?" The question hung in the air until a voice spoke up from the back of the room. It belonged to Dr. Liz Rivera, a theoretical physicist who had been quietly studying the data for days. "What about towing them?" she suggested. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. "Towing?" Wilson repeated. "The smallest of their ships is larger than our biggest vessel." Rivera nodded eagerly. "Yes, but we don't need to physically drag them. We could create a gravitational field, a sort of pulling effect." Blake's eyes widened as he caught her meaning. "Like using our fusion engines to create a directed gravitational wave." "Exactly," Rivera said, stepping forward to access the main display. "If we modify our engines to create localized distortions in spacetime, we could essentially pull their ships along behind us." The next 12 hours saw frantic calculations and heated debates. The plan was theoretical, risky, and would require resources beyond what the Pathfinder carried. But it might work. Wilson presented the plan to Earth's unified command via secure transmission. "We're talking about refitting every major spacecraft we have," he explained, "and building new specialized towing vessels as quickly as possible." General Adams looked skeptical. "The resources required would be enormous. We're talking about the largest coordinated engineering project in human history." "With respect, sir," Wilson replied, "we're also talking about saving millions of lives." The decision came within hours. Humanity would commit everything necessary to the rescue operation. Back on the Pathfinder, Blake led a joint human-Valyrian engineering team. Communication remained difficult, but their shared purpose bridged many gaps. The Valyrians, despite their advanced technology, showed remarkable interest in humanity's approach to problem-solving. "Your methods, unusual," commented the Valyrian engineer whose name translated as current against flow. Its bioluminescent patterns rippled with what the humans had begun to recognize as curiosity. "You use simple tools for complex problems." Blake grinned as he manipulated a 3D model of the modified engine design. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." The first prototype failed spectacularly, creating a gravitational pulse that knocked out power across half the Pathfinder. The second attempt melted the test chamber, but the third test showed promise. A small, sustained gravitational pull that could, with enough power and proper configuration, move a massive object. "It's working," Blake shouted, his fatigue forgotten as the data streamed across his display. The Valyrian engineer's lights pulsed rapidly. "Surprising. Your civilization, younger than most we encounter. Yet you adapt quickly." Blake looked up at the alien, suddenly struck by the enormity of what they were attempting. "We have to. Your people need help, and we're not going to give up until we figure this out." For the first time, the translation system conveyed what might have been Valyrian emotion. "This quality may be your greatest technology." The United Nations General Assembly had never been so full. Representatives from every nation on Earth packed the hall, with thousands more watching via holographic projections in adjacent rooms. The Secretary General stood at the podium, her face solemn yet determined. "We face an unprecedented situation," she began. "Millions of lives hang in the balance. Not human lives, but lives nonetheless. The Valyrian fleet will not survive without our help." Images of the stranded alien ships appeared on the massive screens behind her. Close-up footage showed Valyrian families, parents holding children whose bioluminescent patterns flickered weakly as life support systems continued to fail. The rescue plan requires resources beyond what any single nation can provide. The Secretary General continued. "We will need ships, personnel, manufacturing capacity, and raw materials on a scale never before coordinated." The room fell silent. Throughout human history, nations had competed more often than they had cooperated. Old rivalries, economic competition, and political differences had always stood in the way of truly global action. But something was different now. The Russian delegate stood first. Russia commits its entire space fleet and shipbuilding capacity to this effort. The Chinese representative rose next. "China offers all available resources from our lunar mining operations and orbital factories." One by one, nations large and small pledged what they could: ships, technology, scientists, raw materials. Countries with advanced space programs offered vessels and expertise. Others promised food, medical supplies, or manufacturing capabilities. Small island nations, their very existence threatened by rising seas, pledged their best engineers who had developed innovative energy solutions. African nations offered rare earth minerals crucial for the new engine designs. South American countries committed their agricultural output to feed the massive workforce that would be needed. "This is unprecedented," whispered an aide to the Secretary General. "Every single nation is contributing." Aboard the UES Pathfinder, Captain Wilson watched the proceedings with Elder Calith, the Valyrian leader whose crystalline exoskeleton glimmered with pulses of light that the translation system identified as profound surprise. "Your planet, divided into territories?" Calith asked. "Into nations," Wilson explained. "Different governments, languages, cultures, yet all now work as one. For strangers." Wilson nodded. "It appears so. This behavior, unexpected. Most species help only their own. On Earth, the global mobilization began within hours. Factories shifted production to spacecraft components. University research labs worked around the clock on the theoretical aspects of the gravitational towing system. Ordinary citizens volunteered skills, time, and resources. In orbit around Earth, construction began on the specialized towing vessels. Existing ships were retrofitted with the experimental engines designed by Blake's team. The International Space Station became the coordination center for the rescue fleet, expanded rapidly with additional modules to house the growing number of personnel. News networks broadcast continuous updates. Children in schools collected supplies for the space workers. Retired engineers and scientists returned to work, offering decades of experience. Even competing corporations pooled patents and research data, removing barriers to innovation that had stood for generations. The most remarkable change was in humanity's collective mood. Crime rates dropped. Political tensions eased. A sense of common purpose spread across the planet in a way that no previous crisis or achievement had managed to create. "It's not just about saving them," said a young engineer in Tokyo as she worked on engine calibrations. "It's about proving what we can do when we work together." 3 weeks after the UN meeting, the first specialized towing vessel completed its test flight. Named Unity, it successfully demonstrated the gravitational pull technique on a large asteroid, moving it into a new orbit with precision that exceeded expectations. When the news reached the Valyrian fleet, their ships lit up with patterns of communication so intense that Earth's orbital telescopes detected the light show from 1,000,000 kilometers away. Elder Keleth sent a message to Earth. "We witness something remarkable. Not just rescue, but transformation. Your species becoming something greater through helping others." The Secretary General's response was simple, Perhaps that is the most important discovery we've made since your arrival. The day of the rescue operation arrived after weeks of frantic preparation. 50 modified Earth vessels, each now equipped with the experimental gravitational towing system, approached the massive Valyrian fleet. From the command bridge of the lead ship Unity, Captain Wilson watched as the rescue armada took position. "All vessels report ready, Captain," said Lieutenant Ramos, his voice tight with tension. Wilson nodded. "Begin final approach sequence. Remember everyone, gentle and slow." The Earth ships moved carefully into formation around the largest Valyrian vessels. These would be towed first, as they contained the majority of the alien refugees and had the most critical life support failures. Commander Blake's voice came through on the command channel. "Engineering teams report gravitational generators at full capacity and stable. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Wilson took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. Either the largest coordinated space maneuver in human history would succeed, or millions of lives would be lost. "Activate towing fields," he ordered. Across the fleet, the modified engines hummed to life. The space between the human and alien vessels seemed to ripple slightly as the gravitational fields engage. On Unity's main display, power levels surged as the engines created the carefully calculated distortions in spacetime. "Field establish," reported Blake. "Beginning gentle pull in 3, 2, 1. The Unity shuddered slightly as the gravitational forces balanced themselves. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the massive Valyrian vessel began to move. All around them, the same scene played out as Earth ships coupled their gravitational fields to the alien craft. "It's working," someone shouted, breaking protocol but expressing what everyone felt. The celebration was short-lived. Alarms suddenly blared across the command bridge. "Power surge in towing vessel 14," called out the operations officer. "Their field is destabilizing." On the tactical display, one of the Earth ships showed critical readings as its engines overloaded. The Valyrian ship it was towing began to drift unpredictably, rotating toward another vessel in the formation. "Collision alert," Ramos shouted. Wilson watched in horror as two massive alien ships drifted toward each other. At their current trajectory, they would crash in less than 5 minutes, potentially killing thousands. "Divert auxiliary vessels to stabilize those ships," Wilson ordered. "And get me a direct channel to Vessel 14. The communication opened to reveal smoke-filled bridge and emergency lighting. "Captain, our primary systems are fried," reported the ship's commander, coughing. "We can't re-establish the towing field." A new voice entered the communication, the distinctive harmonic tones of a Valyrian. "Human vessels. We offer solution." On the main screen appeared a Valyrian engineer, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing rapidly. "Redirect your field frequencies to match this pattern," it said as a complex waveform appeared on the transmission. Blake studied it quickly. "It's a harmonic stabilization pattern. They're showing us how to strengthen the fields by synchronizing them." "Implement immediately," Wilson ordered. The remaining Earth vessels adjusted their field frequencies, creating a synchronized gravitational network. The drifting Valyrian ships slowed their dangerous rotation and gradually stabilized. "It's working," Blake confirmed. "The synchronized fields are creating a more stable matrix. We can resume the tow." For the next 12 hours, the rescue fleet worked in perfect coordination with Valyrian engineers, adjusting and refining the gravitational fields as they slowly moved the enormous alien fleet toward Jupiter's orbit. The gas giant's stable gravitational field would provide a safe harbor while more permanent repairs could be conducted. As the first Valyrian ships settled into their new orbital positions, cheers erupted not just from the rescue fleet, but from billions watching back on Earth. The images broadcast globally showed human and Valyrian crew members working side by side, combining technologies and knowledge in ways neither species had imagined possible just weeks earlier. On Unity's observation deck, Wilson stood with Elder Calith, watching as more ships arrived safely. "Your people risked much," Calith said, inner lights pulsing gently. Several of your vessels damaged. Crews in danger. Wilson nodded. The risk was worth it. Why? Asked the Valyrian leader. Wilson considered the question. Because today we proved something important, not just to you, but to ourselves. What did you prove? That when faced with a choice between fear and compassion, humanity can choose compassion, even for those unlike ourselves. The makeshift repair station orbiting Jupiter buzzed with activity. Hundreds of Earth vessels surrounded the massive Valyrian ships, ferrying supplies and technical teams between them. After 3 weeks of intense work, the immediate crisis had passed. No more Valyrian ships were in danger of critical life support failure, and the first permanent repairs to their hyperspace engines had begun. Dr. Lang floated through the zero-gravity medical bay aboard the Valyrian flagship, carefully observing as a Valyrian healer named Marin demonstrated their medical technology. The device in Marin's 3-fingered hand emitted a soft blue light that sealed a wound on a human engineer's arm without leaving any scar. Remarkable, Liang whispered. No stitches, no recovery time. Marin's light patterns pulsed in what the translation system now identified as their equivalent of a smile. Simple cellular regeneration. Your bodies respond well to the treatment. Across the ship, similar scenes played out as the two species shared knowledge. What had begun as a rescue mission had evolved into the greatest learning opportunity in human history. In the main engineering bay, Commander Blake watched in awe as Valyrian engineers disassembled one of their smaller hyperspace engines. His team recorded everything, though much of the technology remained beyond their understanding. This component, explained the Valyrian engineer Taver, pointing to a crystalline structure at the center, creates quantum resonance field, allows ship to, how do you say, slip between normal space. Blake shook his head in wonder. Our physicists have theorized about this for decades, but we've never been able to create a stable field. Taver's inner lights flickered in a pattern that the humans had learned indicated amusement. Your mathematics correct. Your materials science. Not advanced enough yet. How long did it take your species to develop this technology? Blake asked. 3,000 years after achieving space travel, Tavor replied. Blake did the math quickly. We've only been in space for about a century. We have a long way to go. Fast learners, humans, Tavor said. Very adaptive. The knowledge exchange wasn't one-sided. Despite their advanced technology, the Valyrians found many human innovations surprising. They were particularly impressed by Earth's computer programming techniques and network security protocols. Your system's more flexible than ours, explained a Valyrian data specialist to a team of human programmers. We build perfect systems slowly. You build imperfect systems quickly, then improve. In the agricultural section of the Valyrian mothership, Earth botanists shared techniques for growing food in confined spaces, something humans had perfected on their space stations. The Valyrians, despite their advanced technology, had always relied on stored food during long journeys rather than growing it en route. Perhaps the most profound exchanges happened in the cultural center established on a repurposed Earth space station. There, humans and Valyrians shared art, music, philosophy, and history. The Valyrians projected stunning three-dimensional light sculptures that told the story of their civilization's growth across multiple star systems. Humans countered with music that moved many Valyrians to what appeared to be their version of tears, pulsing patterns of deep blue light that rippled slowly through their bodies. Your species feels emotions, very strongly, Elder Calith commented to Captain Wilson as they watched a chamber orchestra perform Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Is that unusual? Wilson asked. Among space-capable species, yes. Most evolved to suppress emotional response. Logical thinking prioritized for survival. Wilson smiled. We've never been good at suppressing our emotions. They drive us as much as logic does, sometimes more. Perhaps why you helped us, Calith suggested. Emotional response to distress. Perhaps, Wilson agreed. But I like to think it was both emotion and logic that led to our decision. compassion guided by reason. As the weeks passed, the knowledge shared between the species began to bear fruit. Human medical facilities reported breakthroughs in treatment techniques based on Valyrian cellular manipulation. Energy systems on Earth became more efficient using principles derived from Valyrian technology. And in research labs across the planet, the first theoretical models of a human-built hyperspace engine began to take shape. The universe, it seemed, had become a much smaller place, and humanity's place in it suddenly much larger. 3 months after the rescue operation began, the Valyrian fleet hung in perfect formation around Jupiter. Their once damaged ships now gleamed, hyperspace engines repaired, and life support systems fully restored. The time for departure had arrived. Earth sent representatives from every nation to witness the historic moment. A specially constructed observation platform orbited nearby, its viewing halls packed with diplomats, scientists, and ordinary citizens chosen by lottery to represent humanity. Billions more watched from screens across Earth. Captain Wilson stood beside Elder Caliph on the bridge of the Valyrian flagship. The massive chamber hummed with activity as final preparations were made for the journey home. "Your people have accomplished something remarkable," Caliph said, inner lights pulsing with what Wilson had come to recognize as deep emotion. Few species would expend such resources to aid strangers. Wilson smiled. "We've gained as much as we've given, Elder. The knowledge your people have shared will advance our civilization by generations." "Knowledge alone is not wisdom," Caliph replied. "Your species possessed wisdom before our arrival. You simply lacked opportunity to demonstrate it beyond your world." The ship's communication system activated, and the Secretary General of the United Nations appeared on the main display. Her face was solemn yet proud. "Elder Caliph, on behalf of all humanity, we wish your people a safe journey home. The friendship between our worlds will not end with your departure." Caliph moved forward, the crystalline structures of his exoskeleton catching the light. "We came to your system as refugees. We leave as allies." His translator conveyed the words, but the rippling patterns of light across his body communicated emotion beyond translation. "Before we depart," Caliph continued, "the Valyrian High Council has authorized me to present humanity with a gift." A smaller Valyrian approached, carrying an intricately designed crystalline sphere. Caliph took it and held it toward Wilson. "This contains the coordinates and communication protocols for the Galactic Concord, an alliance of 17 spacefaring civilizations who share knowledge and resources peacefully. We have also included our recommendation that Earth be considered for membership when you achieve regular interstellar travel capability." Wilson accepted the sphere with careful hands. Its surface glowed softly, seemingly alive with data. "This is incredibly generous, Elder." "It is merely fair exchange," Caliph replied. "You have shown the qualities the Concord values above all: compassion, ingenuity, and cooperation across differences. These are rarer in the galaxy than advanced technology." The departure ceremony continued with speeches and cultural exchanges, but the most powerful moment came without words. The Valyrian ships, arranged in perfect formation, began to activate their repaired hyperspace engines. One by one, they illuminated from within, their hull materials becoming translucent and revealing the complex energy patterns building inside. On the observation platform, humans watched in awed silence. Children pointed and adults held their breath as the massive fleet began to glow with increasing brightness. The Valyrian flagship was the last to power up. Elder Caliph turned to Wilson one final time. "Your people will not be forgotten, Captain. When Earth ships one day arrive at distant stars, they will find the name human is already known and welcomed." With that, Caliph rejoined his crew. Wilson returned to the observation platform, just as the hyperspace engines reached full power. The spectacle that followed would be described by witnesses for generations. The Valyrian ships didn't simply disappear. They transformed into brilliant points of light that stretched, expanded, and then collapsed inward in a cascade of colors the human eyes had never before witnessed. The fabric of space itself seemed to fold around them like cosmic origami. And then, In a final flash that briefly outshone Jupiter, they were gone. Later that night, as the Earth observation ships began their journey home, Wilson stood alone at a viewport, looking back at the distant blue marble of Earth. "Everything changes now," said Dr. Maya Reed, joining him. Wilson nodded. "We're not alone anymore. And more importantly, we've proven something to ourselves." "What's that?" "That when the moment came to define who we are as a species, we chose to be helpers rather than bystanders." He smiled. "That's a good foundation for our future among the stars." Across Earth, people looked up at the night sky with new eyes, seeing not just distant lights, but potential friends waiting to be met. Humanity had passed its first great test as a spacefaring civilization, not through conquest or technological might, but through a simple, powerful choice to help those in need.